All right, listeners, welcome back to Talk Tickers. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Ocugen's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Okay.
They just dropped the transcript this morning. And, well, stock's already down 8.69%.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to dig into whether this reaction is justified or if there's an opportunity brewing here.
Yeah, it's definitely a head-scratcher at first glance. Because on the surface, there's a lot of positive news in this call.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First up, we've got their 3 gene therapy programs, all in clinical trials, which is always a good sign.
Exactly, and we're not just talking early stages here. Their lead candidate, OCU 400 for retinitis pigmentosa, or RP for short, is already in phase 3 trials in the US. And just today, they announced Health Canada has given them the go-ahead to start a phase 3 trial there, too.
So double the phase 3 action. That's got to be good news for development timelines, right?
Absolutely. Running parallel trials in different countries can significantly speed things up. And there's more good news for patients with RP. The FDA also just greenlit an expanded access program for OCU 400.
Okay, pause for a second. For those of us who aren't clinical trial experts, what exactly does that mean?
It means that eligible patients with RP can get access to OCU 400 even if they're not enrolled in the trial itself. This is huge because it shows the FDA is confident enough in the safety and potential efficacy of the treatment based on the data they've seen so far.
And it's a major lifeline for patients who currently have very few treatment options for this debilitating disease.
Exactly. It really speaks to the severity of the unmet need here.
Now on to the other programs. OCU 410, which targets dry age-related macular degeneration, or DMD, is in phase 2 trials. They mentioned we'll be getting a safety and efficacy update at a clinical showcase next week.
That'll be a key data point to watch for sure. Millions of people suffer from dry AMD, so if OCU 410 shows promise, it could be a real game changer.
And finally, we've got OCU 410ST for Stargardt disease, which is actually the most common inherited retinal disease. Phase 1 is wrapped with a good safety profile, and Phase 2 is ready to roll.
Again, addressing a significant unmet need there. No FDA-approved treatments currently exist for Stargardt disease.
So 3 programs, all making good progress. But here's what really caught my eye. This modifier gene therapy approach that Ocugen is championing. It seems different from most gene therapies we hear about.
It is quite unique. Instead of targeting just one specific genetic mutation, their therapies aim to restore the overall health of the retina.
So almost like a holistic approach to the eye.
Exactly. You could think of it like tending to an entire forest ecosystem, rather than just focusing on one particular type of tree. If it works, it has the potential to treat a much wider range of patients compared to those hyper-targeted gene therapies.
That's a powerful concept. But of course, with any novel approach, there's some inherent risk involved. It's not a guaranteed slam dunk.
Of course not. But to their credit, Ocugen seems to be managing their resources well. They just secured $30 million in debt financing, extending their cash runway into 2026.
And they're going after huge EE markets, right? We're talking millions of potential patients with DMD and hundreds of thousands with RP in the US, Europe, and Canada combined.
Absolutely. If their therapies prove successful, the market opportunity is massive.
But hold on, before we get too carried away with the potential here, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The stock dropped almost 9% today. That's a pretty big hit.
It is, and it gets even more interesting when you consider that on this call. An analyst named Jason McCarthy brought up a question a lot of investors are probably thinking about right now: safety. Gene therapies in general have faced some setbacks in recent years, so there's definitely heightened scrutiny around their safety profile.
So how did Ocugen respond to those concerns?
They asserted that their track record so far has been solid, with no serious adverse events directly related to their products.
Which is good to hear. But of course, long-term safety data is still something we need to watch closely.
Absolutely. That data will be crucial in determining whether this modifier gene therapy platform can truly live up to its promise.
So big potential upside, but also some risks that need careful consideration. That's the biotech world in a nutshell, right?
It certainly is, and it makes it all the more exciting to follow, especially when you have a company like Ocugen pushing the boundaries of what's possible with gene therapy.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, that's a perfect segue to our This Is Not Financial Advice segment.
Yeah.
Where we throw out some wild, but hey, maybe not so crazy trade ideas. Ready to get speculative?
Always up for a little brainstorming. Hit me with your wildest theory.
All right, so picture this Ocugen, riding high on the success of their upcoming clinical trial results. All 3 programs are sailing through the phases, showing remarkable safety and efficacy. Investors are clamoring to get a piece of the action.
Okay, I'm seeing dollar signs already. What's the play?
Well, since Ocugen is laser-focused on rare diseases, with potentially curative therapies no less. What if a big player like Roche, already a giant in the ophthalmology space, swoops in for a buyout?
I like where you're going with this. A buyout would certainly accelerate Ocugen's path to market and give Roche a significant competitive edge in the gene therapy space.
Exactly. They'd be snapping up this unique modifier gene therapy platform, essentially getting a head start on the competition. It'd be a blockbuster deal for sure.
Now, let's be realistic for a second. This is pure speculation. We're just having some fun here, exploring the possibilities.
Absolutely. This is not financial advice segment for a reason.
Yeah.
But, hey, stranger things have happened in biotech, right? Especially when you're talking about potentially groundbreaking therapies and billion-dollar markets.
True enough. Biotech is a wild ride. And sometimes the biggest winners are the ones who take calculated risks.
Speaking of risks, one thing that stood out to me in the call was that Ocugen's CEO hinted at actively seeking partnerships to boost their working capital. Do you think this signals they might need more than that $30 million loan they just secured?
It's definitely something to consider. Clinical trials are incredibly expensive, and if all 3 programs continue to progress as planned, their burn rate could increase significantly.
So bringing in a partner could be a strategic move to share the financial burden, but also gain access to expertise and resources from a bigger player.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation. It's a very common strategy in biotech, especially for smaller companies with ambitious pipelines.
All right, let's put those "this is not financial advice" hats back on for a second. Here's another wild thought. What if, instead of a big pharma buyout, Ocugen decides to go public through a SPAC? They could merge with a special purpose acquisition company, raise a boatload of capital, and still retain control over their destiny.
Now, that's an interesting angle. While the SPAC craze has cooled off a bit, it's still a viable option for companies looking to go public quickly and efficiently.
And it would certainly generate a lot of buzz around Ocugen and their technology. Headlines would be screaming, "Ocugenize IPO through SPAC to fuel gene therapy revolution."
Catchy indeed. But let's not forget, SPACs come with their own set of risks and challenges. It's not a decision to be taken lightly.
Right, this is all purely hypothetical, not financial advice in any way. But it's fun to think about the different paths Ocugen could take and how those decisions could impact their future.
It definitely highlights the high-stakes nature of the biotech world. Big risks, big rewards, and sometimes unexpected twists and turns. It's what keeps us all on the edge of our seats, right?
Absolutely. And speaking of being on the edge of our seats, we've got that clinical showcase next week, where Ocugen is set to reveal more data on OCU410 for dry AMD. That's definitely something we'll be keeping a close eye on.
Agreed. Those updates will provide more clarity on whether Ocugen's bold vision for modifier gene therapies is truly coming into focus.
Okay, before we wrap up, I have one final burning question. Ocugen's stock is down today, despite what seems like very positive news. Do you think the market is missing something here?
Well, biotech stocks, especially those in the clinical stage like Ocugen, are notoriously volatile. They're often driven more by sentiment and expectations than hard numbers.
So even though Ocugen is reporting tangible progress in its clinical trials and has secured additional funding, the market might be reacting to other factors, like broader market trends, or maybe even profit-taking after a recent run-up in the stock price.
Precisely. Remember, investors are always trying to anticipate the future, and sometimes their short-term reactions don't necessarily align with the long-term potential of a company.
It's a good reminder that the stock market doesn't always behave in a perfectly logical or predictable way.
Absolutely. It's a complex system influenced by a myriad of factors, including human psychology and emotions.
So what's the key takeaway for investors who are watching Ocugen?
I think the most important thing is to focus on the fundamentals of the company. Look at the science behind their therapy, the progress they're making in their clinical trials, their financial health, and their competitive landscape. Don't get too caught up in the day-to-day fluctuations of the stock price.
Sound advice, especially in the often turbulent world of biotech investing.
Indeed. Now, while we wait for those crucial data readouts from the clinical showcase next week, I'm curious what stood out to you the most from this earnings call?
You know, for me, it's the sheer audacity of this modifier gene therapy platform. It's a bold bet, no doubt. But if it pays off, it could truly revolutionize how we approach treating not just eye diseases, but potentially a whole range of genetic conditions.
I agree. It's a fascinating concept with massive implications. And whether Ocugen ultimately succeeds or not, they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible in gene therapy. And that's always exciting to see.
It really feels like Ocugen is at a crossroads. They have this groundbreaking technology. They're targeting massive markets. but they're still a relatively small player in a very competitive space.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And it kind of leads to a question many investors are probably asking. What's the most likely scenario for Ocugen's future?
Right. Will they be acquired by a larger company? Will they go public through a SPAC? Or will they continue to grow organically?
Well, it's impossible to predict the future with certainty, but I think we can look for clues in their recent actions and statements.
Like that comment from the CEO about actively pursuing partnerships.
Exactly. That suggests they're aware of the challenges of going it alone in the biotech world and are open to collaboration.
Which strategically makes a lot of sense. A partnership could provide them with not just financial resources, but also valuable expertise and distribution networks.
Precisely, partnering with a larger, more established company could be a game changer for Ocugen, allowing them to accelerate their clinical development, expand into new markets, and ultimately reach more patients.
So while the possibility of a buyout or a SPAC is still on the table, it seems like their immediate focus is on securing strategic partnerships.
That's my read on the situation as well. They seem to be prioritizing building a sustainable business for the long term.
Makes sense. And frankly, it's a more prudent approach than chasing short-term gains through a quick exit.
Agreed. They have something truly unique with this modifier gene therapy platform. And by carefully navigating the complex world of biotech, they have a real opportunity to make a lasting impact.
It's going to be fascinating to watch how their story unfolds over the next few years.
Absolutely. Ocugen is definitely a company to keep on your watch list. And speaking of watching, make sure you tune in next week for our coverage of their clinical showcase. We'll be breaking down the latest data on OCU 410 for dry AMD.
Can't wait for that. Okay, before we sign off, let's have some fun with one last "this is not financial advice" scenario.
Hit me with it.
What if Ocugen partners with a tech giant like Google? Google's been making moves in the healthcare space, and their expertise in AI and data analysis could be a perfect complement to Ocugen's gene therapy platform.
Now that's thinking outside the box. You could imagine them developing algorithms to personalize gene therapies based on a patient's specific genetic makeup and lifestyle factors.
Exactly. It would be a marriage of cutting-edge technology and groundbreaking medicine.
A partnership like that would definitely shake things up in the biotech industry. But remember, folks, this is purely hypothetical, just a little food for thought.
Absolutely. This is not financial advice, just some speculative fun. But it does highlight the incredible potential that exists at the intersection of biotech and technology.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Girl.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into Ocugen. Thanks for joining us on Talk Tickers.
And be sure to check back soon for more in-depth analysis of the most exciting companies in biotech. Until next time, remember, do your own research before making any investment decisions.